Good afternoon. Welcome to another Lunch and Learn with Purse Strings. My name is Maggie Nielsen, and I'm a partner here at Purse Strings. We're all about doing these lives to share some information, get the wheels turning, get some questions answered. But then, if you're thinking about being a stay at home parent, if you need a plan for retirement, if you're getting divorced, getting married, whatever it may be, we have top tier financial professionals willing, ready, and able to serve you. We call those our purse strings approved professionals, and Bonnie Mays is one of them. And so we're so excited to have her on today to talk about having a one income household and how that's financially feasible and successful. And so before we dive into all of that, Bonnie, could you give us a little intro of who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me here today, Maggie. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. But I'm a financial advisor just outside of Topeka, Kansas. I mostly work virtually with clients, although I do have some locally. I serve people all across the U.S. And I really enjoy working with just like mainstream Americans, working class, and also focus a lot on women, LGBTQ members, and just communities that have traditionally had a hard time accessing financial help. I try to keep my
Yeah,
services affordable and want to be able to help people that have been priced out up until now.
I love that. Yeah, I love how you're so
Thank you.
inclusive of everyone. That's
Thank you.
awesome. And so, yeah, we're excited to dive into our conversation today. And if anyone has questions along the way, throw them in the chat. We're happy to answer those. And if you're watching the replay and still have some questions, throw them in the comments and we'll work on coming back to those as well. And so, yeah, Bonnie, I was looking at your profile and you were 15 years as a stay at home parent.
I
So
was.
you probably know this very well.
Yeah, so it was not the plan at all, and that's what we'll talk about today. Some is like being flexible and adjusting to those changes as life unfolds, and you think, well, maybe we need to take a different direction. So and yeah, I went to law school, and the plan was for my husband to stay at home with the kids after I was done with law school. But then by the time I was out of law school, he had gotten a couple promotions and was making much better money, and it just worked out better for me to be the stay-at-home parent. And then I thought, well, I'll just stay at home until the kids are in school.
Right.
But then we ended up having a special needs child, and it just worked out better for us to homeschool our kids. So, I ended up taking off 15 years from my career. And then,
Wow.
yeah, I came back deciding to be a financial advisor because then I still have the opportunity to work from home quite a bit and allows me that flexibility to still be home with my kids some.
Yeah. So, how does a couple decide if it's even financially feasible for one parent to stay home?
Well, it's a really complicated question. It's a lot
Yeah.
more than you would initially think. Like, it isn't just as simple as comparing daycare costs and salary. There's so much more that goes into it. And honestly, before you even get to the financial part, it's not, I just want to put out there, it's not strictly a financial decision for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, people don't just do it to save money on daycare. There's lots of reasons someone might choose to be a stay-at-home parent. And my job as a planner is to help them figure out how to make it work. So but things that you would need to consider are, um if you're giving the stay-at-home parent, are they going to be giving up any benefits they were getting from their employment? And how much is it going to cost to be added to your partner's health plan if they have
Yeah.
one, and that sort of thing. Was there any insurance you were getting, like life and disability, that you need to replace? And setting up retirement accounts so that you make sure you're still saving for your retirement, and making sure that's part of the budget. And people will talk a lot about saving money on commuting,
Right.
saving money on like workplace lunches, things like that. But there's a lot more to get into with just like taxes, with your benefits, making sure that all those things are still taken care of. Make sure you're protecting yourself for the future, still making retirement contributions. It's if it's your first child, are you making contributions for their future for education
Yeah.
savings, all that. So all those are things that you need to really look at when you're working on your budget. And really, communication is key. And I encourage people to really take a deep dive, work with an hourly planner for just,
Yeah.
as long as you need to really figure things out, and then frequently check in with each other, like set up weekly meetings, like see how things are going, where you need to adjust.
Those are great tips. Yeah. It can
Hmm.
be, it is more than just that daycare, which I know is a huge expense
Hmm.
as it is.
It
But yeah,
is so
some of those,
expensive.
if the working parent had a lot of great benefits, especially if they had really good health
Right,
insurance or something like that, those are huge aspects as well.
right,
And
absolutely.
so I know you said that you kind of decided to stay home because your husband got a better paying job and you had a child with some special needs. And so what else kind of went into this decision, and what were some of the impacts, of being a stay-at-home mom, to the finances or to, the family?
Absolutely. So, I mean, to be honest, we really do live in a two income world. And
Hmm.
so,
We do.
there, and it can be really challenging to make it work. And so, um, you really have to have your eyes open going into it and be willing to make sacrifices. It's absolutely not something you can just easily do. You'll have to think about a lot of purchases that you may not have really thought much about before, like going out to dinner or like expensive trips or anything like that. You're really going to have to plan out ahead of time. The other thing I'd recommend is really building up your emergency savings
Mhm.
before you lose that second income. Just making sure that's in place for any big expenses that come out. Because if you're just barely making it month to month, what happens when you need to replace a car or, some big
Yeah.
expense comes up? You really need to have plans in place for that as well.
And I guarantee you, with children, some big
Yes,
expense will come up.
absolutely.
Like,
Emergency room bills. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there will always be something.
Yeah,
And so it seems like it's a conversation to really start, before you even are having the children, because I
absolutely.
know sometimes people have kids and they're like, oh, now I decided that I want to be a stay-at-home mom, where it's like,
Right.
we need to back into that of that emergency fund, that's just not
Yeah.
doubled in size all of a sudden, or, some of these different moving parts. It's not like I'm just going to leave my job.
Right.
I'll put in my 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And some parents will think they're going back to work after the birth of the baby and then decide, no, I think I'm going to stay at home instead. And so you kind of need to get creative too. Like, is it
Hmm.
possible to stay at home but still do some freelance work, or can you do some
Right.
remote work? Work part time. There's lots more options now than there used to be, I will say.
Yeah.
Lots of options for working virtually, or I've seen some parents will kind of work opposite schedules. Like if they're in healthcare or something, like one will work one shift and one will work the overnight shift. So someone's always at home with the kids. And there's really a lot of ways to get creative to try and help keep the money coming in, because it is
Yeah. Those.
expensive. It is so expensive to raise a family these days.
Yeah, yeah. And I know, I mean, you're not living in like a huge big city or anything like
Right.
that. I don't know how some of these families do it in like the heart of New York or something like
Yeah.
that. It's
Right.
a huge expenses.
Yeah.
And so how can couples set themselves up for success with a one income household?
I'd really, yeah, like I talked about with the emergency fund, really make
Yeah.
sure that's built up. Make sure you are communicating all the time. It can be really difficult for people to talk about money. It's hard for couples to talk about. So that's something you need to make sure that you're comfortable doing, and figuring out where bills are going to get paid from and who's responsible for what. And, if you have a baby and you're suddenly like working on 3 hours of sleep every day or something, like, know who's taking care of what and who has that
Yeah.
responsibility. It's just a lot to think through, like have things systematized as much as possible so you're not worrying about it. But also, yeah, do have the regular check-ins, and make sure that the stay-at-home spouse is or partner is being taken care of in terms of like retirement savings.
Yeah.
They can still contribute to like a spousal IRA, um, using their spouse's income. Look into those sort of options. Don't just like let everything go into the working person's 401k. The
Yeah.
stay-at-home spouse should be have their savings too.
which is also a great tax benefit as well. I mean, helping
Yeah.
with, the spousal retirement and things like that.
Hmm.
And so do you have like a certain day you and your partner, sit down and always check in? Did you guys have a certain day of the week?
We usually try to do Sunday evenings because then
Okay.
we'd also like go through the calendar for the week and like figuring out who needs to be where and who's taking care of what appointments. And
Yep.
yeah, it's
That
just
that
kind of
week
like
lineup,
planning
got to
out the
get
week. And
prepared.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so then, how, stay-at-home parents, they might then want to re-enter the workforce later.
Mhm.
How do you kind of discuss that, or what are some of those challenges?
Yeah. So, if a parent is wanting to re-enter, you can make sure you're staying up on your skills. If there's any sort of online classes you can do from home, updating your resume. Um, Explore if there's a way you can like kind of gradually re-enter the workforce, if
Hmm.
that's an option, part-time or doing freelance work, that sort of thing. And then just look at again what makes most sense in terms of benefits, in terms of insurance, retirement savings, all those sort of things. The best way to coordinate those between the two spouses and covering of the kids. Yeah, and if you need help figuring out if it makes sense, absolutely talk to a financial planner on just like
Yeah.
an hourly basis is affordable for most people.
And so how did you kind of decide to go and become a financial professional, not really go with that legal degree that you are working on, and kind of get back into the workforce?
Well, the one thing law school taught me was I never wanted to be a lawyer. And so I I worked in public policy some after law school before we had kids. And then I just saw online that K State was offering this online personal financial planning. And I thought it really was the perfect solution for me because I love helping people. I've always kind of been fascinated by finance and educating people about it. And it's a pretty flexible job. So I'm able to
Yeah,
still stay at home with my kids, and then it just worked out perfect. Also, because I finished right when the pandemic started. And so I was able to launch my career from home, and it's just really worked out well.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting. Yeah. 'Cause sometimes we do have to get more education or whatever it may be, whether we picked a
Yeah.
different route or, I mean, being home for 15 years, the technology changes and all these
Yeah.
other things have changed. So you're like, oh, I got to
Yeah.
get back up to speed.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
but it's nice that you're able to find something that's really you found passion about as well, and not just
Yeah.
trying to get a job to make money to pay the bills, but something that you really
Yeah.
love to do.
Yeah, and it's okay to take that pivot, like if
Yeah.
you don't think the career you left would work for you any longer, explore what else is out there and see if there's something else you can use your experience for. And lots of employers will value that time you spent as a stay-at-home parent because they recognize like the skills it takes to
Yeah.
run a household and to get to raise kids. And it's not looked down upon as much as people think sometimes, I think.
You've got great organization, you know how to stay calm in
Absolutely.
tough situations, you know how to deal
Absolutely.
with, bad clients on their bad days, all those
Right.
different things.
Absolutely.
And so then what are some of like the long-term impacts to a couple's financial health if one person wants to stay home and be, that stay-at-home parent?
So the big things I would look at with that generally is you'll see reduced savings,
Hmm.
um, especially for retirement. And then for the stay-at-home parent, they won't be earning as many Social Security credits. And so it can really affect the amount they're going to get in Social Security someday. So that's why you really want to make sure that you're still contributing to your retirement, um, and really know what your plan is for making up for that. Like, can you get into a higher paying job once you do re-enter the workforce? Or how can you make up for those savings that probably were lost during the time you were at home? Because, I mean, even if you're only able to contribute a little bit, it's still, you still want to save what you can. But
Yep.
the reality is you're not going to be able to save as much being a stay at home parent, probably. So,
Yeah.
really look
And
at that and then, yeah, still plan for your future and figure out how that's gonna look.
can you dive in a little bit to the Social Security credits? I always think this is a
Mhm.
thing people don't know enough about.
Mm.
And so I would love if you can explain that a little bit more.
Right. So when Social Security is looking at how much you will get paid in retirement, they will take your earnings from the highest 35 years you were paid. So if you take off several years or if you don't work for 35 years, then those years will get counted as zeros in your earnings report, and that will bring down the average earnings that they say that you've earned, and it will really bring down your benefit. If you're still married when you're taking Social Security, and this is something you should probably talk to a planner about because there are lots of nuances with Social
Yeah.
Security. But you can generally, if half of your spouse's benefit is more than what your own benefit would be, then you're entitled to half of your spouse's benefit. But yeah, it will affect you much more than if you kept working like that entire time. And no, I don't think that's fair because obviously being a stay-at-home parent is very hard work. But yeah, you don't get credit as far as Social Security is concerned.
Yeah, and we've all been to school where you get a zero on something and you see how that
Yeah,
average really
really
drops.
brings it down. Yeah.
Yeah, which can be, a bummer, which I get, you're not paid as a stay-at-home mom, but it is still a full-time job, so it's that weighing
Right.
there, to get everything to really balance. But I think you gave a lot of great tips of really just keeping, the conversation open, kind of try to prepare with your emergency fund as much as you
Hmm.
can. And then, look at those benefits that you're giving up and seeing how else you can kind of supplement those. Like a big thing we always say is, stay-at-home moms still need life insurance, even though you're not bringing in an
Absolutely.
income. It's
Hmm.
essential
And
because,
disability insurance. Like who would
yeah,
take care of the kids if they got sick or injured? Yeah.
exactly. So, and to meet with a, financial professional to have these conversations and to really weigh these options. I know not all times we have all this planning time. Sometimes, situations push comes to shove, and that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
But I know, somebody like Bonnie can also help you build a plan from there on out, making the best foot forward.
Yeah.
And so, Bonnie, what are some of the ways you work with your clients? I know you kind of said that you have a lower fee structure or more opportunities for people to kind of work with you. And you keep talking about having someone pay per hour. Can you kind of describe like your different pay structures?
Yeah. So I work with people in kind of three different areas. So I do financial coaching, which is for people who are really like overwhelmed by debt or not able to meet their expenses each month. And that is just a monthly fee. For financial planning, which is getting into more like planning for the future, you're in a pretty good spot, but making plans for the future. I do that on either an hourly basis or like a project based fee, or I do ongoing planning paid by the month as well. And then
Okay,
I also do investment management, which is charged separately.
awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people assume that you need that $500,000 to get
Right.
started and get investing to get that help. And that is
Yeah,
not the case. I know like a lot of our
absolutely. I have no
professionals.
minimums. I don't require anyone invest with me. If you just need help and ask questions, there's someone who can help you out.
Yeah, and I love that, especially, sometimes getting your budget on track. You're like, why am I paying money when I really have no money? But these
Right.
people like save you a ton of money and save your sanity and help you
Right.
sleep at night. So all those things
Absolutely.
are well worth it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think we touched on a lot of great information.
Yeah.
Is there anything we didn't touch on you want to make sure is shared today?
I don't think so. Yeah, communication, that's where it's at. Make sure
Yeah.
don't let money ruin your relationship because yeah, everybody knows the statistics about how that's the number one thing couples fight about. So really get comfortable discussing money gets before you lose that second income. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you, Bonnie, for jumping on today and sharing
Thank
your
you.
expertise.
Thanks so much
Please
for having me.
yeah, feel free to reach out to Bonnie as her email's been going through the bottom, bonnie@maizefinancial.com. She's also one of our Purse Strings approved professionals, so you could reach out to her off our site, pursestrings.co. But yeah, let's jump into the conversation and be financially fearless. Thank you.